and is assisted by the staff of the Community and Economic Development Department and the City Attorney's Office. Staff will advance any presentation slides that should have been provided prior to this meeting. The meeting is divided into two parts. This first part is a public hearing where we expect to hear new applicants explain their request and receive comments from affected parties. The second part of the meeting is termed the general meeting and is primarily consisting of acting on recommendations from staff about the cases that came up in the prior month's meeting. We invite everyone who wishes to participate to be heard. We do ask that you be concise in your comments and that speakers avoid being repetitive. That is, if several people have pointed out traffic concerns, there is no need to hear additional comments regarding traffic again. But we would like to hear anything new that has not been addressed. In order to allow everyone to have an opportunity to speak, there will be a 3-minute time limit for each speaker, and the clerk has a timer for that purpose. We respectfully ask that you adhere to this rule. We also ask at this time that you silence all mobile devices. Additionally, if anyone who comes up to speak, please state your name and your address. With that, we thank you all for being here, and I'll turn the meeting over to the Vice Chair, Leanne Mullins.
Thank you. Item 1, proposed text amendment to the infrastructure, conservation, and intergovernmental coordination elements of the Lakeland Comprehensive Plan, Our Community 2030, to update the water supply facilities work plan consistent with the Central Florida Water Initiative Regional Water Supply Plan. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Hello, good morning. Damaris Stahl, Senior Planner with Community Economic Development. Last year, St. John's, Southwest Florida Water Management Districts, along with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, collaborated and approved the 2020 Central Florida Water Initiative Regional Water Supply Plan. The plan provides a framework to meet water needs. In this slide, you can see our the map here shows from the regional water supply plan and all of the water districts along with our neighboring watering districts as well. And it's also the Florida statutes is listed there as well. And on the next slide, we have all of the statutory requirements, and basically it is coordinating through the comprehensive plans and also revising our water supply plan. Next slide. Revising our conservation element, our capital improvement element, and intergovernmental elements, all within our comprehensive plans, and that's basically outlined in each one of those statutory requirements. The next slide. And then, of course, during our evaluation and appraisal review, they just want us to make sure that we include the updates of the water supply that we've had in our comprehensive plan as well. And so each one of those guidelines that are listed in the statutory requirements, we've complied with in our plans as well. And so we updated our Chapter 3 in our comprehensive plan, which is titled Effective and Well-Maintained Infrastructure. The Water Department has also provided us a water conservation plan, and we use that as part of our guidelines throughout our comprehensive plan. And their plan is updated annually and will be used within our technical support documents in our comprehensive plan. Chapter 3 is the, Chapter 5 is the attractive and environmental friendly community, and that includes conservation efforts that are within our plan. And then Chapter 6 has our responsible and accessible government. And that basically, the parts that were updated were to participate and implement the regional water supply plan. And the map above is our water service area. And the next slide. Let's see here. The water plan also covers at a 10 years period identified all of our alternative and traditional water supply projects, as well as conservation and reuse activities that were needed to meet our projected future demands. We have smart water meter and the toilet rebates that are currently in place. And then, of course, all of the population and updates have been listed in our plan as well. And that's it. So if you have any questions.
Any questions from the audience? Can a motion to approve?
This is just a public hearing. Right, this is just a public hearing, so we'll be back next month with a recommendation. This is just a public hearing today, so we'll be back next month with a recommendation for you to vote on.
If you want us to make testimony, that would be appropriate now.
I think that was already done. Yes.
Okay, moving on to item 2, major modification of PUD zoning for tracts B and C of Morgan Creek Preserve to allow for the construction of 321 single-family detached homes on approximately 129 acres, generally located north of West Pipkin Road, south of Medulla Road, east of Hamilton Road, and west of Mykonos Crescent Drive. Owner, MCP2 LLC, applicant John Hall, Polk Community Association Management.
Hi, good morning. For the record, Joshua Cheney with Community Economic Development. As you can see, the site is located here to the southwest of the airport. Again, it is 4 parcels totaling approximately 129 acres. It's generally located west of Pipkin Road, south of Medulla Road, east of Hamilton Road, and west of Mykonos Crescent Drive within the Morgan Creek subdivision. The parcels have residential low and preservation, conservation, recreation, future land use, and are identified as tracts B and C within the Morgan Creek PUD. This was originally approved by the City Commission in 2004 and then amended again in 2006. John Hall of the Polk Community Association Management Incorporated requests a major modification of the PUD zoning for tracts B and C to increase the number of residential lots from 99 single-family detached homes on 10,000 square foot lots to 321 single-family detached homes on 5,500 and 4,000 square foot lots. Access to the development will still be from West Pipkin Road, and with that, I will turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair. For the record, John Hall, 5121 South Lakeland Drive, Suite 1. First, we agree with what the staff is saying. We are requesting a major modification, but it's in keeping with the market and the way the market has moved just recently. Now, the 4,000 square foot lots, I think, are actually 4,400s. They're 40 foot wide by 110s, but I'd like to actually point out several things in reference to this site. The site is about 15 years getting to this point because of some things that were out of the developer's control, such as the housing downturn in 2009. There was no market for lots of any size at that point in time, and You who were here, you recognize that. There was not enough utilities, water and sewer, to meet the needs of any additional construction on that side until just recently, when Publix was built on the corner of County Line Road and West Pipkin Road. Then the water main had to be looped down County Line and West Pipkin. And then the lift station was upgraded also to allow for additional sanitary. This request is market-driven, as I've already stated. The desire to have large lots at this point in time is not as great as it was in years past. Most young professionals do not want to spend their weekends maintaining lawns. They would rather spend it with children and family. So if they have smaller lots, they can do that during the week. They've got their weekends free. They can spend it with their kids at soccer games or baseball games or whatever they have activities for the weekend. This developer wants to be a good neighbor. I know that there has been some anxiety in the past, but we want to just build this out and get out of the area, and we want to do it and make it compatible with the other neighborhoods in the area. And when I say the other neighborhoods, that's the ones that have recently been approved. And we want to remain consistent with the city's land development code when it comes to the planned development process. So I think that we're attempting to do that. This change, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, where it abuts the existing Morgan Creek, is going to be separated. It's not going to be a part of Morgan Creek. It therefore will not be a part of sharing their amenities. It will have its own amenities. It will have its own clubhouse, its own pool, its own trails, and we're working with the city staff on those items, so to make sure of that. So this is actually going to be a standalone community. And Micanopy Crescent Drive runs in, it fronts West Pipkin Road, and then it dead ends right there at the eastern side of the proposed change in this development. We intend to just truncate that road right there. It does not come all the way through as it would have in the past. So there will be two actual communities, Morgan Creek and Gresham Trails, and they'll have their own individual amenities. So I think that, again, with the stuff that's been approved for Hawthorne Mills and Riverstone and the other developments in the area, this is in keeping with those. Morgan Creek and the lot size there was developed back in the early 2000s when there was a market for that size lot, and there's not now. This is more geared toward workforce housing or young professionals with young families, just getting started. So I'll stand for any questions if you have any.
What would the price point be of these homes?
Pardon me?
The price point?
Well, several builders are being talked with right now. So I'm not sure what the price points will be. It'll depend upon the builder that is selected to go in there. But as in any community, and Morgan Creek, which is right beside it, there were 8 builders in Morgan Creek. So there could be multiple builders in here, but we want to keep it in that workforce housing price range, young professionals just getting started. I don't know if that helps, but I don't have a specific dollar amount right now because the builder's not been selected.
I
I have a question. What kind of market research did you do to find out that people wanted 40-foot lot sizes, 40-foot wide? And how close are the houses next to each other?
The houses are going to be, they're proposed right now to be 10 feet apart, 5-foot setbacks on the side yards, okay? And the market research is actually just what the market is right now, and the city has approved some 40-foot lots. The county has approved some 40-foot lots. It's more geared toward keeping the price of the overall homes down. With the price of property right now, you cannot, or a developer cannot afford to go out and buy something and design and develop 10,000 square foot lots unless he's charging over $100,000 a lot. You just can't do it. So the market research is, we've kept an eye on what's going on in Polk County. We've kept an eye on what's going on in the city of Lakeland. We've kept an eye on what's going on in Lake Wales and Haines City. So 40-foot lots are becoming more of a norm than the exception at this point. Yes, sir.
321 single-family homes. Have you done any studies, any traffic studies been done yet as far as the increased traffic and the effect it would have not only on Morgan Creek but on the entire area with that many more homes in that one section?
A traffic study has not been done yet, but it will be required before final approval of the plans when we give that to the city and the city staff. But a traffic study will have to be done. It's my understanding, I believe, I was in a meeting and West Pipkin is a traffic level B at this point. So it's nowhere close to its capacity. To help out with that, going back to the east, West Pipkin is going to be 4-laned now. The 4-lane is going to be extended from Medela Road, where it ends right now, and goes back to 2-lane. It will be extended all the way to Hardin Boulevard as a 4-lane, and then going further east from Hardin Boulevard to South Florida Avenue, it will be a 3-lane. So there will be 2 travel lanes and a turn lane in the center to kind of stage traffic. So that's a long answer to your question, but we have to do a traffic study before the final approval.
Another question? Any comments from the audience?
I still have a question. Is there going to be some sort of barrier between Pipkin Road and the back of those houses?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That also will be a part of the final plan. Right now in Morgan Creek, there is a wall. We do not have the final design plan here. It will either be a berm with vegetative buffer, or it will be a wall similar to what is in Morgan Creek. So yes, there will be a buffer behind the homes that back up to Morgan, or back up to West Pipkin.
I have one more question. You show that entry road extending into the preserve area. Why is it being extended?
The road is it actually stops right there, but there is a portion of property to the north. You'll see it doesn't have any hash marks or anything. It's to the north of the conservation area that could be developed in the future. And we don't know who would develop that at this point, but it could be developed in the future. And instead of coming in off of Medela Road, which is a smaller 2-lane road, it would just make sense to bring that traffic in off of a boulevard that is a separated boulevard within the neighborhood, and then out onto a 4-lane road.
So would that boulevard be built that way from the beginning, where it kind of just has that dead end, or would it just kind of tee and then you would build that other portion later?
It would either T, where people would have a turnaround, or it would cul-de-sac, one or the other. But it would not just go up and stop.
Okay.
There would be some way, if someone missed a turn, if they didn't know where they were going, they missed a turn in the neighborhood and went past it, they would be able to turn around up there.
Thank you.
Have you done any studies, or have you looked into what percentage of the lots across West Pipkin are 40-foot wide lots?
We've looked at those, and to tell you the truth, I don't remember that right off the
Because I don't remember any of them being in there being that narrow.
Well, the staff is here and they could answer that question, but along with smaller lots over on the other side of the road, I think there are multifamily, and we're not proposing any multifamily. We're just proposing single-family homes here. So that holds the density down, just no multifamily. But yes, I think that there are smaller lots over on the.
It would be worth knowing for our benefit, what percentage of those lots that were in the Highland Homes subdivision and now Riverside, what percentage of those lots are actually 40-foot wide?
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head.
To your question,
Yes.
to answer your question, Town Park Phase 1 and 2 do not have any 40-foot lots. I believe all those lots are probably a minimum of at least 7,000 square feet.
You know what, I'm sorry, I can't hear you with your mask on. What did you say?
Town Park Phases 1 and 2 do not have any 40-foot lots.
Correct.
I believe the minimum lot size there is at least 7,000 square feet.
Right.
But Matt, can you speak to Riverstone and Hawthorne?
Riverstone is all 50-foot lots,
Yes.
so no 40-foots there.
And Hawthorne Mill, which is?
And Hawthorne Mill, I believe a maximum of 30% are 40-foot lots. The remainders are 50s and 60s.
Thank you.
Also, if you look on the map, on the first part of Morgan Creek at the very back, there are some smaller lots, but I don't think they're 40 feet.
Yeah, there
I
are
wanna
a
say
few of
there-
them, I just
Are
looked.
there?
There's a percentage of them, that's on Litholo Loop,
Yes.
and there are a percentage of them. Most of them are the exterior perimeter lots that got built on later by Adams Homes, and some of those are 40-foot lots.
Everything within this development currently has a minimum 50-foot wide lot within Morgan Creek Phase 1.
You're talking about what we're talking about now. Those currently are 50-foot lots.
The
and they wanna
existing
make them
Phase 1
40.
has a minimum of 50 foot.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
What she is stating is Morgan Creek, the development to the east of what we're proposing here. This is Gresham Trails. It's going to be its own separate subdivision. Morgan Creek has 50-foot lots by 110. The minimum lot size in there, to my knowledge, and I've been around it for a little while now, is 5,500 square feet. But as you just heard, the market is moving more toward 40s and 50s as a combination, because you can, in Hawthorne Mills, a maximum of 30% of those lots could be 40s.
But you're talking 100%.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. This is a combination of 40s and 50s. So.
Okay, what percentage of them are 40-foot lots?
At the bottom of the site plan, you can see that there are, on the western portion of this development, 66 50-foot lots, and those are 50 by 130. 109 are 40 by 125. And then over on the east side, there are 74 at 50 by 125 and 72 at 40 by 120.
That works out to 56%.
Okay.
When you say the market calls for it, are you sure you're not just saying that because you want to put as many lots as possible to sell them? Is that really what you're talking about?
Well, I think that if you take a look at what the market has gone to, you just heard from the city staff that 30% of Hawthorne Mills can be 40-footers.
So you're making a total 100% jump with 60% of these?
With
60% of your lots
50%.
are 40 feet, right?
That's what it appears. About 60%, without doing the math.
Is the city going to place any requirements there as far as percentages on the sizes of lots?
No, we have in the past, but if you recall, you had a recent development come forward off of US 92 Memorial Boulevard out to the east by the power plant, the Causey property. And that one, I believe, ended up at, was it 50%, Matt, that had the 40-foot lots?
Yes, my recollection is that the Cypress Point was 50%. Staff had recommended less there. Just to clarify, Hawthorne Mill, that's a larger development. I believe they have approval for approximately 1,500 units, and the approval 3 years ago for the 40-foot lots, it was based on the additional amenities that were proposed at that time by the current developer. That developer has since sold the property, but staff did have concerns even then about the percentage. So we do want to ensure that these are healthy, balanced, mixed communities, that we're not just overloading them on one product type here. So this would be closer to 60%, as indicated.
And where are your proposed amenities going to go?
Pardon me?
Where are the proposed amenities going to go?
If you take a look on the east side, all the way at the top, you'll see where it says recreation. That was put strategically there because the area behind it can also be used for recreation. So as the amenities develop, tot lot, swimming pool, clubhouse, whatever is decided to go in there, then it would expand into that area to the north and slightly east of the area that is labeled recreation. And there will be, as we've talked with the city staff about, there will be some type of trail system in there to get the people on the west side of that boulevard area to the east to get to those amenities.
Those amenities are totally separate from everything from Morgan Creek, is that what you were saying before?
Absolutely, yes, sir. They are totally separate. The people from this subdivision will have their own amenities. Morgan Creek has their own amenities. Now, I can't tell you that someone living in this facility won't become friends with someone in Morgan Creek and get invited to their amenities and vice versa. The people in Morgan Creek may be invited to these amenities. That's just our society. But yes, these amenities, this is not intended to overcrowd the Morgan Creek amenities and put all of these people into their clubhouse or into their pool or into their tot lot. There will be separate amenities here.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I do want to echo the concerns with the 40-foot lots, particularly with the percentage that's shown here. I understand that there may have been 40-foot lots approved similarly in the area, but I somewhat see the concern of it. Almost appears as though you're just trying to get as many lots into the development as possible without regard to really trying to fit within the confines of the context. And a 10-foot lot or 10-foot difference of a lot doesn't really justify the need for lawn mowing and all that kind of stuff. That stuff happens. You know, if a 40-foot lot versus a 50-foot lot doesn't change that really. So I'd recommend that we'd look for some wider lots here. I don't know that percentage is what I'd like to see.
Well, it's within this board's purview, the way I understand it, to put some stipulations on and give me instruction and the city staff instruction. I would urge you not to go greater than a 50-50, which is what was just approved recently in another subdivision.
With regards to the one on 92?
Yes.
So, and I'll speak to that one because I was here when we approved that. I think that fit the context a little bit greater. There were a lot of established homes on 40 foot in that area. Out here, I don't see that. So I would have concerns with the 50-50 on this one.
Is there a way to do 45-foot lots? I mean, is that a possibility? Kind of meet in the middle?
The width of the lot is a function of the design. So yes, we could meet that in the middle.
What is the city standard? It's 60, right?
For this area, if this was developed under a standard residential zoning designation, yes. So the allowability for 40-foot lots has only occurred through planned unit developments.
Right.
And
I just had more of a comment. I know that the county has allowed 40-foot lots in some of their developments, but they've also, there are developments that have, they're not just a straight row of 40-foot lots. There's some 50-foot mixed in, so it allows for the development to not just feel like home after home after home, and it breaks up some of that monotony of driving down the street. So that's just a suggestion.
And if you take a look at this, and it may not be as evident on the screen, but that is exactly what is proposed here, is these are not all 40-foot lots in one side and 50s in the other. There's a mixture of 50s and
Except they're mainly on the end or where there's curves and they have to be a little bit bigger. But you have those blocks where they're just 40 after 40 after 40 instead of like mixing in a few 50s in there to break up some of that rhythm of that neighborhood. It's just a suggestion.
Sure, and that's just, again, a function of design. If we need to put 50s interspersed in the 40s, that's not a problem.
Can you speak to the future development to the north? I understand that maybe outside of the city limits. Has that been approached with the county?
I have no idea. I haven't been involved with that to the north, but I don't know if it's city or county.
Yeah, Matt can provide some background on that.
Yes, the area you referred to is shown as Tract D here. If you recall, I believe it was end of last year, we did have a proposal from a different developer to develop that, and that was via a property in the county off of Madola Road to the north there. And I think you heard from the neighbors substantial concerns about the drainage, wildlife, other impacts there. That one did get denied by the commission there, so that is not going forward. I think the feeling was it was premature, and the way it was being developed was not appropriate. So right now that parcel does not have any entitlements for future development, but of course with the proposal before you, if they were able to access from the south, that could be revisited at some point there.
I like that site plan.
The main crux of what he just said for your answer is that it was a different developer. I don't have any idea what that developer had proposed there.
But just to clarify, those were larger lots. I believe they were around 10,000 square foot lots.
Any other questions? Any comments or questions from the audience?
Mr. Chair,
Richard, you come to
Madam Vice Chair, as running the meeting, we just asked for favorable consideration. Yep. We just asked for favorable consideration, and I'd like to reserve rebuttal time after the other comments. Thank you.
As would I. My name is Ray Feldwick, 4342 Tecosy Place in Morgan Creek, Lakeland 33811. First, a statement. The residents knew when we bought in here that this land was going to be developed, and we have no problem with that as long as it meets certain criteria of the original PUD, especially concerning Tract F. This development should be turned over, Phase 1. It's completely separate from the second one. It's been under development since 2005. 16 years is long enough. 130 out of the 133 lots have homes on them. The remaining 3 belong to the developer. So over 90% of the lots have been conveyed per 720 instructions for turnover. And because there's no physical connection between the two communities, we request that this PUD modification be contingent upon turning over Morgan Creek to the residents. So now I ask, is Chesham Trails new community completely independent from Morgan Creek Phase 1? If the answer is yes, then I ask it be turned over. If no, I assume it will become part of Morgan Creek Preserve Residents Association or become a sub-association of the HOA. And this raises questions and concerns. We were very happy to hear that the amenities, our amenities, won't be compromised by another 321 families trying to inhabit them. But will Chesham Trails complete the amenity package that the original PUD called for in Morgan Creek, which included a clubhouse on 20,000 square feet? There's clearly no room for that in what is being proposed, and that was part of the original PUD. Our other major concern is the attachment of this new community to our existing HOA. Although HOA operations are not the purview of this committee, I contend that the quality of life in these communities is, and it's part of your deliberation. Since 2015, my experience has been that the HOA managing entities and individuals have inflicted misery and financial hardship on Morgan Creek. They have diminished the value of living in Morgan Creek. I asked you to consider the following before forcing Morgan Creek to endure this again. Members have virtually no say in the HOA. Our dues have gone up 62% in 4 years. No annual meeting in 2015, 16, 18, or 19. May I have an extended beyond this? I think you should hear the rest of this.
It's your discretion.
There aren't that many people here.
Another minute.
Okay. No annual financial reports. The developer refuses to produce all the required financial records, including $555,000 on the balance sheet he says we owe. Landstar quit-claimed 3.9 acres of common land containing all our amenities back to itself in April 2018. This is land, Landstar now leases this land to us, which we had owned for 13 years, back to the community, $54,000 a year, so we have the right to go in a pool that we once owned. Fraser and Landstar removed without explanation $184,000 from our reserves, and which violated Florida Statute 723.036H, which requires a vote of the non-developer members to use reserves for things other than they were originally intended. He said we owed him the money, but that doesn't absolve him of the fact of violating 720. There are no board meetings, and as I demonstrated in these previous examples, he refuses to run the HOA in accordance with 720. There are many other instances too. I believe he's a proponent of what I call mushroom management, which is keep them in the dark, feed them BS, and cut them off at the knees.
We've let you go a lot longer than 3 minutes.
I'm sorry?
You're going to have to wrap it up. We've let you extend it. It's supposed to be a 3-minute limit.
Okay, I'm done. I'm requesting if the Planning and Zoning Board approves the PUD, it be contingent upon the turnover of Morgan Creek Phase 1 and the return of our Track F. Thank you.
Any questions?
Hi, good morning. My name is Robert Hawks. I live
Can
at
you
40.
set that up on the next step? We're losing part of it. Thank you. All right.
I can do that. I can multitask.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you, guys. My name is Robert Hawks. I live at 4740 Lathloa Loop. I live in Morgan Creek. I've lived there for 3 years. One of the things as I looked at this and as I thought about this, these two developments are entirely incompatible with one another, and I think you have brought up some of the same thoughts and considerations that we've talked about. This is the first time that we've heard that the amenities were completely separate, that they were going to have two different homeowners associations, and as Ray has said, we have concerns as citizens about the running of the current HOA. But I will challenge what Mr. Hall said about the viability of the housing market. On Micanopy, we had a home that was recently sold for $599,000. Another one on Tecosi for $400,000. We had two across the street where I live that were sold within days of each other. I say the housing market is very viable in this area. And if we look at the previous PUD, as Ray said, the clubhouse was one of the amenities that we were told when this next development came in, it would be part of our amenities. Now, I don't see in that little spot there that they can put a clubhouse and all the other things that are being promised here. So I think we're listening to empty promises from a developer who wants to stick in 321 homes as tight as you can in that area, which obviously will affect the housing value of me over in Morgan Creek. So if this is approved, it will affect our housing value. As Ray said, I am not adverse to putting something over there that fits with the community, fits with us, but we need to have it separate. This whole new development needs to be separate from Morgan Creek. We need to turn over the homeowners to us living in there. 90% of the homes are owned by people in that community. And I think it's time for a little bit of change on that. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Question? Anyone else from the audience?
Good morning. My name is Nelson Kimball. I live at 4335 Tecosi Place in the Morgan Creek development. I'm just here to add my vocal support to what you've already heard, and also to, if I understood correctly in the article in yesterday's newspaper where the agreement was reached to expand the size of homes in the mobile home parks to 4,000 square feet, that this certainly isn't the size of a lot that you would expect to see in a single family development community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Peoples. I live at 4485 Micanopy Crescent Drive and off in Morgan Creek Phase 1. And it's a great community, great neighbors. Don't have an issue with the development, but would ask, I own the property immediately to the west. I don't have a pointer, but it's the one at the end of the cul-de-sac there.
To the west. 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 Left. There's something over here.
Yeah, down. Oh, that. Down, that piece right there. And if you pull up the previously approved PUD, you'll see there was some buffering in that general area right there. And I would just ask that there be some consideration to maintain that buffer along the west side of the boundary. And then also where the recreation area is proposed in the new layout, that there be some proposed natural buffering that goes there. There's a wetland there that's currently in place, and but if it's going to be separate, then I think it should be separate with adequate buffering between the two sites. As you can see, there's quite a big difference between the lot sizes. I'm not going to argue compatibility, but I just want to see adequate buffering. Thanks.
Anyone else from the audience?
Good morning. My name is Gary Harrison. I live at 4660 Lathloa Loop in Morgan Creek Preserve. And I'd like to respond to a comment that Mr. Hall, representing the developer, made about Morgan Creek having its own amenities, and that those will not be affected. Morgan Creek doesn't have any amenities. They are privately owned by Landstar Lakeland, Brian Frazier. And those being privately held could be bought and sold to anybody. accessed by anybody. We have no control, no say, and are never consulted. We do, however, get to pay for maintenance of mowing, landscaping, pool maintenance, in addition to paying a lease of $54,000 to $56,000 a year to use those facilities that we did, as Ray had mentioned, we once owned. And how did that happen, I think, is very important to know. That in 2005, the original declaration had recorded Tract F, which houses all the amenity package. This is all in Morgan Creek, was conveyed to the Morgan Creek Homeowners Association. But later on, there was an action taken by Landstar Fraser to quick claim the deed to that property. And it was in violation of the original covenants, which stated that Landstar Lakeland Incorporated shall not be permitted to withdraw any property after it has been conveyed by an owner other than Landstar to an owner other than Landstar Lakeland without a joinder to the owner. That was never done. And I think also that the pool house was occupied by a commercial operation and shown as a business address, and this is a residential property. It's not permitted by the city of Lakeland zoning regulations to operate commercially in a residential property. And I think all of this goes to the fiduciary responsibilities in 720, and that should be considered. I understand that I'm out of time, but this shouldn't be transferred over by the same developer to another development. I am not anti-development. I'm pro-development. My history and my career has been in that field. It needs to be done correctly and in consideration of the city's statutes and the state statutes for this very purpose. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is David Martin. I live at 4632 Left Loa Loop, and I'm mainly here to just extend my support to those who've already spoken. But Mr. Hall stated a minute ago that this developer wants to be a good neighbor, and I would suggest that this developer has been anything but a good neighbor. I've lived in this neighborhood for 12 years. Again, you've heard the list of all the mismanagement, all the ways that it's not being, our neighborhood's not being run properly, how we're being, I believe, taken advantage of. And we're begging you guys to please do something. I'm all for the development. If he can develop it and we can be made separate from this, I say great. I don't want to stand in his way if that's going to mean that we're still under his control. And so I'm all for him being able to develop this. But, you know, like I say, we've seen the lot sizes, and as one of y'all said, it seems like they're just trying to cram as many as in there as possible, which doesn't seem to be what a good neighbor would do.
Anyone else?
Hello, Commission. My name is Billy Friend. I'm sure some of you recognize me. I was in on the English Creek development.
Could you give your address, please?
Pardon me? My address is 4840 Medella Road. I feel for the people of English Creek, or is it English Creek? Morgan's Creek. But there's a lot of good things with the upcoming development that is being proposed by Mr. Frazier. One thing is, it supports Publix. Publix being on County Line Road is really big for this area. You're drawing people from Plant City, Mulberry, Lakeland, South Lakeland, all over. If this development does not go through, there's the possibility that Publix might decide to, close up. It could happen. I'm not saying it won't, but it could. The other thing too is looking at the papers from the developer, the lot sizes are fairly large. We fought development, and the development that we fought, it was like they were trying to put way too many homes in a subdivision. I support the development. So that's all I have to say.
Questions? Any other comments? Board?
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, just a couple of things that was said. I think it was mentioned about a 20,000 square foot clubhouse. There was never a 20,000 square foot clubhouse proposed. There was a 20,000 square foot lot for the clubhouse amenities that was proposed. That is still there. As a matter of fact, again, if you go to the retention or the recreation area up in you can see it right there, clubhouse on 20,000 square foot minimum lot. So it never was a building that was proposed as 20,000 square foot. I don't want you to get that in your mind and think, well, there's a change. There's not. If you will go back to the other one, the current requested. Okay. Where the recreation area is, as I stated before, all that area to the north can be utilized as amenities change or as amenities are added. So there will be a clubhouse there, there will be a pool there, there will be a tot lot there, and we don't know what else will be there. So as the amenities change, so will that. There's a lot of talk about the state statute and 720 and stuff. That has no bearing on this board's decision on this. However, just so that I can refute, one of the things that was said, 90%, what the state statute says is that a subdivision, a development will be turned over when 90% of all lots in all phases, not just one phase. You don't just turn it over in phases. So 90% of all lots in all phases have been sold. And that has not happened here. So that's why it has not been turned over. If you take a look at the minimum lot size in the current Morgan Creek development, because we were talking about that and comparing lot sizes. Let's compare that to square footage, not just frontage, okay? The minimum square footage in the current Morgan Creek on Lathloa Loop is 5,500 square foot lots. The minimum square footage in what is proposed is 5,000 square foot lots. This is not 40 feet wide by 110 feet deep. This is 40 feet wide by 125 feet deep. So there's a 500 square foot difference. About half of this room, maybe. I don't know what this room is, but about half, maybe. So you're not talking about a very large area. What you're talking about is frontage. And there are models of homes now. There are product on the market that can fit on 40-foot wide lots. You'd mentioned 45-foot lots. That if that's something that this commission wants to say, go back and take a look at, we'll be more than happy to take a look at it. and see what we can do with it. But again, that's going to dictate that we take a look at the 50s and the 40s and have a blend there. So just keeping that in mind. Again, there's a lot of stuff that was said that has no bearing on this development. This development is a totally separate, it's individual from Morgan Creek. And what you were hearing is a lot of stuff about Morgan Creek. This is not Morgan Creek. This is Gresham Trails. So what we're proposing, totally separate areas, totally separate development, totally separate amenities, totally separate entry and exit, and being blocked off from Morgan Creek. The Morgan Creek Parkway will not go through there. If there's more rebuttal, Mr. Chair, I would ask that you give me time, because there's going to be stuff that I may need to address if you allow rebuttal. So with that, I'll stand for any questions, any more questions that this commission may have.
I have one.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
if this is approved, then you are essentially going to be vacating the platting, the planned unit development that was originally known as Morgan Creek. You would be vacating the rest of that platting, is that correct?
We would be changing that. This is a change to the original PD or PUD. It was originally, I think, 4745, then it was modified to 4818. This is a change to that last modification. So yes, it's the same PD, it's a modification to that PD. But
So it stays the same planned unit development?
No, ma'am. It is separate from Morgan Creek.
Okay, because, all right, I just wondered if it was vacating the platting and all of that.
No, it is separate. It is separate from Morgan Creek.
So if it's separate, then how can it stay together as far as the HOA turning over? I mean, it's either separate or it's not.
That is a question for the future. Right now, the same developer still owns all of this, and this board has not approved this this PD change. So we will comply with the state statute 720 when 90% of all lots and all phases have been transferred. Then Morgan Creek will be their own association. They will be in charge of that. It'll be turned over to the membership, as will this development.
I have a question for Teresa. When we went through this with Section E and all of the recommendations that were made by staff that went on to the city council, and it was approved, was it approved with all of those recommendations?
It was not approved,
I mean,
but it was brought forward with those
okay, it was brought forward with those recommendations and they turned it down with the recommendations. Is it a possibility with this section to do essentially the same thing? To put the recommendations as far as what had to be done for this to go forward?
Right, so there's been some discussion about this being a separate development, separate planned unit development in terms of a zoning district. And what we believe will occur if you make a recommendation to approve this, there would be an ordinance creating a separate planned unit development. And within that planned unit development, we would have conditions of approval just like Phase 1 does and just like we had proposed for the English Creek development to the north.
Okay, so maybe it's just me, but I'm really confused about separating Morgan Creek from this. Is that something that has to be done legally, or is that something that can be done with the zoning if we separate this out from an existing PUD?
If you're talking about the ability to develop this property,
Right.
that gets accomplished through the PUD to make them separate. and through the adoption of this site plan that shows there being no connection between the two, and then it having its own set of development standards. If you're talking about the HOA, that is outside of this planned unit development today. It just calls for the need to have an HOA to be able to maintain common areas. Whether or not that HOA becomes separate or there's a new HOA created, that would be the developer's choice as to how that occurs. But I think that in terms of conditions, between now and the time we come back to you, we'll have to take a closer look at that, because we have implications in our own land development code about PUDs. The middle word there is, unit development, meaning it's a unified development, and unified being it's self-contained. There's control within its own boundaries and even to the extent of maintenance. So we would want to look closely at that and what ability there is to call out that there be perhaps a separate HOA for this PUD to force that conversation forward.
Okay.
But at this time, we're really just looking at the zoning and allowing for this development to occur as its own development pod.
Okay, all right. And this will, when we come back next month or the month after, staff will have all their recommendations, and at that point, we can interject what we think should, gotcha.
Absolutely, right.
Okay.
So we're, just like any other case, we're
Gotcha.
taking your comments and the input from the applicant and the residents into consideration when we come back with the
Okay,
recommendation.
thank you.
So you've already spoken. Can we let?
Well, it's the discretion of the board to entertain more public comment. The customary procedure is that the developer presents their application in the first hearing, the public gets their chance to comment, the developer gets the final rebuttal, and then that's the end of the public comment period. That's not a set in stone rule. If the board has more questions or wants to hear more from the public and wants to entertain more comment, it's up to the board to allow that. It's a deviation from the normal procedure, but it's the discretion of the board. And this is the meeting where public comment is entertained. This will be brought back for another meeting, and normally at the next meeting, it's just staff comments. It's not, although that is something that we have occasionally modified, and when there's been new issues or the public wants to make additional comment, or for a variety of reasons why the board might want to hear from the public again. But this is a public hearing, and that part of the process is taking public comments, so it's up to the board if you want to entertain more.
I believe one other person raised their hand outside of this gentleman who's spoken. Did you have a comment, ma'am? Well, I'm sorry, Chief. Go ahead and we'll allow her to go.
Good morning. My name is Beverly Humphreys, and I live at 4604 Lathloa Loop. And I've lived in this community. I purchased it actually when the original developer, Landstar, proposed the community. And I love the area. I love our neighbors, but I have major trust factors with what I'm seeing. The reason I'm having those major trust factors is because, number one, is experience. What we were promised when I purchased my property, when it was transferred to Landstar Lakeland, those things didn't happen. We have basically, in my opinion, been held hostage as homeowners and have absolutely no say in what takes place in our community. And a lot of us invested in our homes because we love the area. We love living in South Lakeland. The other issue that I have is those lots are just absolutely too close. We live on Lathloa, and yes, we have close neighbors. But our lots are 500 square feet might not mean anything, or 500 might not mean anything to a lot of people, but if my lot was less than that, I don't think I could live there. Second of all, the HOA. If this is going to be a separate community, why would the developer choose not to release us. There's a reason for that. We have fought for years in courts and in mediation to be separated. And I understand what Mr. Hall said about the law saying that until all phases of the development, you don't have to turn it over. Well, they're asking to separate us from this community, but there are still, it seems to me from what I've heard, that they're trying to still hold on to the HOA. There's reasons for that I won't even go into, but I think it needs, I would really appreciate it if this board would consider, number one, giving us back Track F, making that contingent on giving us back what was taken from us. And second of all, let our HOA be a separate entity. And third, make those lots bigger. Don't crowd them in. Thank you.
Can allow you 1 minute, so you've spoken quite a bit. 1 minute and a half here.
I said that we are still owed a clubhouse on 20,000 square feet. I agree with that. And Mr. Hall is talking about putting it in the new development rather than ours. Where's ours is my question. And then secondly, phase 2 was never platted. So it's 90% of what has been platted. He's now getting ready to plat the other. It's because it's a separate community, we really want to have our HOA and be rid of this developer. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, thank you. Mr. Peebles had made a request that there be buffering between where his home is and the new development. There's quite a lot of buffering there. As a matter of fact, all of that hashed in area that you see up there is a conservation easement. It cannot be encroached on. So if you were to go out and take a look at it, there's very thick foliage, there's very tall trees. You will not be able to see the new development from Mr. Peebles' house. Now, on the west side, with this, there is a cul-de-sac that runs right down to the end of the west end. And what happens is if this board, hopefully, approves this, then we get to start working with the city staff on buffering and the other issues or items that have come up. You get to place conditions on our second bite at apple. Once the city staff and we get together, whenever it's brought back to you, hopefully we'll have all this stuff ironed out. But that's not where we are today. We're just wanting to know, can we move forward? And hopefully we can do that. It's as far as you heard again about turning over Morgan Creek. Until something happens with this new development, Gresham Trails, 90% of all lots in all phases of the current approved PUD have not been sold. So the developer has no legal reason to turn that over at this point. So just I hope that we have a favorable outcome. Let us get to the next stage where we get to work with the city staff and come back before you in, I don't know, a month or 2 months, whatever the next meeting would be. But give us that time to work. We've heard what you've said. Just give us the time to work on it with the city staff. And that's all of my comments, Mr. Chair. Madam Vice Chair.
I did want to clarify or ask Mr. Peebles to clarify, but I believe his comment related to the buffer was for property that's owned on the far west end of this subject property.
Yes. And
right, not a personal residence,
well,
but the parcel to the west.
The way I understood his comments, it was actually both. He didn't want to be in his house and be looking at a new subdivision. And then I had already stated that we would work with city staff on the buffering between Gresham Trails and his property to the west.
Just in case that wasn't clear to anyone else, I wanted to make that point. And then, Mr. Hall, could you tell us what will occur in that property that's immediately on the east side of the entry road? There's a large tract there. There's no development shown.
We don't know as of yet, but whatever whatever is proposed to go in there, it'll be you and your staff that we would have to approach for that.
So has there been any consideration to moving the amenity center to that area so it's more centralized to the two development pods?
It has been talked about. I'm not sure that we want it that close to the roadway, but and because it hasn't been decided whether or not this is going to be a gated community yet or not. If you've got children down there by themselves, I'm not sure that we want them that close to West Pipkin if this is not a gated community. So those are things that are going to be hashed out in the future as we move forward. But yes, that has been considered.
Thank you.
I've got a couple questions for Teresa. Do we have a whole lot of precedence of amending or having major changes to previous PUDs similar to this?
Yes, and for example, the two developments on the other side of Pipkin, both Riverstone and then also Hawthorne Mill. So those were two very large developments that had original PUDs approved same time frame, the mid-2000s, at the height of the housing boom. And then as a result of the recession and then coming out of the recession, there were various changes to those PUDs to respond to the market. So yes, there is precedent for that.
And I would imagine all that process to get to that previously approved PUD had recommendations and things accommodated to that. So with this major change, would we just be amending that previous or just sort of starting from afresh?
I think given the separation of the two now, that it would be to have this be its own planned unit development and Morgan Creek stand alone as its own PUD.
And then would we traditionally have, like you noted, an open space that's not identified for any current use based on the current plan approved through the PUD process? Typically, I think we would want to know, what's planned to go there.
Sure, and I'll tell you that's a concern of staff too, is what happens with this very large tract that remains. But what we do know is that it has a residential future land use. So as of today, it cannot be used for anything but residential purposes. But that doesn't mean that the developer or property owner at some point in the future could come in and ask for a change to that future land use, and then they would also need a change to the zoning. If there was to be anything other than what's shown there today, which is no development. So that will require future public hearings and an ask by the developer.
For like a clubhouse, would that fit a traditional residential land use?
It would, and so if the developer wants that flexibility, we could write that into the PUD conditions that the amenity center could be located either where it's currently shown or alternatively be located up front here on the access road. And then they could have additional lots in what's shown as recreation areas. So we can work around that in the conditions.
And then last question, for the original PUD, it was a connection of the existing development, had roadway connections and all that?
Yes, and I don't know, Matt, if you can go back to the slide that, or maybe even the aerial would better illustrate that. So you can see, if you can point to it, Matt, where, is it Morgan Creek Boulevard comes through? Yes, it cul-de-sacs there today.
Oh, yeah. And that's my question too. You have two PUD maps, plat maps it looks like, and they're so starkly different from each other. Whereas the first one that you left kept the nuance of the neighborhood and the winding streets and room for landscaping, and this one clearly does not. So why the change? I mean, you could have made the other one, you could have tweaked the old one and made them a little smaller to put in more houses, but still kept that Morgan Creek atmosphere. Why the change?
You're asking me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. This is a totally separate development. It'll stand on its own. So it is not Morgan Creek. It's not an extension of Morgan Creek. The roadway that was talked about, and that's Morgan Creek Parkway, actually in the original, you can see that it winds through this, and it kind of does some of the same type of stuff that is in the new one. It goes up to the north and then loops back to where it says vehicle access point. So there would be a change anyway, because Morgan Creek has 13 different ponds. It's got, I think, 7 different fountains, different things. That's not, that was not included in this, in the old PUD. It's not included in the new one, as far as the fountains and the number of ponds, because we want to have fewer ponds, larger. So, but that's a function of engineering, whatever they decide. So it is separate. That road truncates. Morgan Creek Parkway stops at the end of, well, it's, I know the roads and the map, just past Nicosi. So it is currently barricaded off. Now, those barricades will be moved, and we'll put up some type of nice buffer, a fence, some vegetative and berm buffer. But the roadway will no longer go through. But it was never envisioned that even back then that this phase looked exactly like phase 1.
So it's a totally separate development, but for purposes of things like the HOA over in Morgan Creek and Club, it's not. No, you're still saying that 90% of all lots must be sold in all phases, and that, even though it's a totally separate operation.
Currently, under the approved 4818, which is what you're looking at right there, 90% of all lots in all phases have not been sold. State Statute 720 requires that once 90% of all lots in all phases have been sold, then the developer has to turn it over. Now, you're asking...
Couldn't one infer from 90% of all phases if there's some connectivity between the developments? There really seems to be no connectivity at all.
There's no connectivity, and I think that's going to be a question for the attorneys. But when this is approved, it will be its own standalone planned unit development. So it will not be a part of Morgan Creek.
Mr. Chair, I'll just chime in on that. Chapter 720 is, there's a provision in there that talks about disputes between homeowners associations and homeowners within that neighborhood. And there's a whole process for dispute resolution there in 720. It doesn't involve the city. The 720 also references the Department of Business and Professional Regulation as the entity that's responsible for regulating HOAs as entities. The city doesn't really have a whole lot of jurisdiction when it comes to regulating the business operation of an HOA. Our PUD criteria, as Teresa was stating earlier, one of the first requirements of the PUD criteria is a unified control over the development with the planned unit development. So I think for our purposes, what this board is looking at is whether or not the development that's proposed it has that unified control, and there needs to be a feasible plan for maintenance of common areas within that development. That's where the HOA comes into our consideration. whether or not they have a viable entity that can perform the required maintenance of the common areas, and whether or not the development is under unified control. When the staff comes back next month, then I'll get with Teresa and we'll look at these issues that have been raised about the HOA, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more clarity as far as what is within your purview to consider and what's not. But for now, I would just say that that's normally something we would consider not within our jurisdiction. There may be some considerations to be made there, but whatever condition that the board does want to impose, it would have to have a nexus to a city code, a part of our land development code. So the 720 is not necessarily relevant, although I don't want to completely rule it out without having taken a closer look at it. Did you have a question?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Like, what I thought that they were asking to do was to separate this piece of land out from the current Morgan Creek PUD and start its own PUD, correct?
Well, I think it's been presented now as a modification to the original, but I think what we're talking about is that maybe because of of what they're saying about the separation of it, that presents a problem with the unified control criteria that we're talking about, which may necessitate a separate PUD as opposed to a modification of the original one. Now, whether or not that has implications on the HOA and whether or not they're required to turn it over now, I don't know, and I'm not sure that it's within our purview to consider that. That sounds like something that they need to consider as part of what they're asking. If they're ultimately asking for something that's completely separate, our code's going to require unified control, which is going to require a separate PUD. If that impacts the dynamic between the HOA and the property owners, that's for them to sort out. But we have to look at our land development code. Teresa, did you want to add to that, or
No,
did I?
that was the thought process, was that, yes, there was a request made to modify, but in the end, how this gets structured may be its own separate planned unit development.
I just have another question too. It appears from this one map that the conservation area parallels the entrance road. Is that correct?
Hold on just a second. Pardon me. Can you go back to the currently proposed? Right. Now, say that again, please.
Yes, the conservation area that is actually north of this portion has, it looks to be a finger that comes down from the conservation area out to Pipkin Road, and it parallels the entrance road into this, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so is this a bridge then that goes from the road into this portion of the development?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and the same thing with, you had talked about the entrance road. Currently, your plan is to dead end it there, but perhaps continue into the other portion, which is north?
That's correct.
Would that be a bridge also over the conservation area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the originally recorded documents gives that latitude to any future development. You can't build in it, but you can build over it.
Okay.
Did you have questions? So everybody, I think we've had sufficient comments unless the board wants to continue. It now goes, we're not taking a vote today, it goes to the Planning and Zoning Committee staff, and they will make their recommendations for our next meeting.
Correct. We would not take another round of public comment on this item. The staff is going to review all the public comments that have been made. They're going to review what the developers requested, and then they're going to come up with their own recommendation, which will be brought back at next month's meeting. And the staff will then present their recommendation, and the board will choose to adopt it or not. It's up to the board, and then the board will either advise the commission to accept the application or they'll deny it. But that'll all happen next month after the staff's reviewed everything. So.
Thank you all for your comments.
Moving on to item 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair.
Change in land use on approximately 8.23 acres from convenience center to conservation. A change in land use on approximately 6.29 acres from residential low to convenience center, and a change in zoning on approximately 6.29 acres from limited development to PUD development on property located north of the Polk Parkway, east of Airport Road, and south of Steeplechase Drive. Owner, Palm Airport Road LLC. Applicant, Hetty Harmon, Silverserve Design Group, Incorporated. And this is continued from the July meeting, and it's consideration of a final decision.
Good morning. For the record, we're also going to, I think, open this up to public comment as well because there's been some changes made. For the record, Todd Vargo with this Community and Economic Development Division. I'll do a brief introduction. We'll let the applicant come up and also tell you what's changed. And then I believe we're going to open it up for public comment as well. This originally came before you in July for a straight zoning change. The applicant is now requesting a PUD. The subject property is currently vacant. It is this area right here in front of Steeplechase along Airport Road. It consists of a mixture of upland and wetland areas with about a 1 acre stormwater pond that serves the Steeplechase residential subdivision. The southwest corner of the property is about 8.2 acres of wetlands with a future land use designation of convenience center. See right here, it says CC. The remainder of the property has a future land use of residential low right now. Due to the presence of those wetlands that I showed you on the previous slide, the development of this 8.23 acres for commercial is problematic. The applicant is requesting approval to move this CC designation to the north so that it sits at the intersection of Steeplechase Drive and Airport Road, and then change the land use on the 8.23 acres from convenience center to conservation. A good thing to note is that this area that will go to convenience center is 6.2 acres. And again, this one is about 8.2 acres. So there's about 2 acres less. Again, the remainder of the property would remain residential low. Again, I stated at the July 20th meeting, as originally presented, the request was initially for this change in land use that we've just talked about, and the application of C1 zoning at this property as well, the 6.23 acres on the northwest corner. At the July public hearing, 7 property owners in Steeplechase expressed concerns regarding the proposed change in zoning. Their concerns included commercial development bringing crime to the area, increased traffic on Airport Road during peak traffic hours, and loss of views and privacy. As a result of that public hearing, the applicant agreed to revise the application to request PUD zoning, planned unit development zoning, in order to adopt specific conditions of approval, including performance standards and a detailed landscape buffer plan, which will minimize the development's impacts. We'll get to those later on. Right now, I want to let the applicant come up, and if they want to make a presentation or anything to say. Yes.
Hello, I'm Hetty Harmon with Civil Serve Design Group. At the last meeting, we did listen to what the neighbors were saying about, the commercial development in this area. Prior to the initial of commercial development, we did look at multifamily for this site too. We felt the site, if it was multifamily, that the impact of the neighborhood would be even greater on the residents. So we went with the commercial, with the C1 zoning to begin with. But because there was comments and concerns from the neighbors, staff suggested, we go with a PUD, which we will, be happy to go that way. The main thing is to include the buffers. We have the 20-foot buffer on the northern part and the 30-foot buffer on the southern part. Okay, and we have two different types of buffers here. On the one that's on the southern part of the property would be a 30-foot buffer on a berm, a 3-foot berm with a fence and landscaping. The buffer in front of the pond would be a 20-foot buffer with just the landscaping on that area. We felt that it was far enough away, and the pond was another buffer in that area. But besides that, we're looking, to move ahead on this project. There are quite a few conditions that they did put in the staff report that the applicant does agree to. They're limiting some of the uses that would be allowed in the normal C1 zoning. So with that, if you have any questions.
Just a comment, thank you for detailing the buffering and what that would entail and what that would look like. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Questions from anyone else on the board?
I guess I just have a question on process. They've changed it from a previous request to a PUD. Do we need to go through a separate hearing process?
So we did renotice this as a public hearing and sent out new letters with the request now for PUD. So today is the public hearing, but because of the fact that we received so many comments previously, we're going to ask you to vote on the recommendation today, after we hear if there are any additional public comments.
The only other question I've got is we're not really detailing out the site too much. So my question is to the south, where are we creating any landlocked parcels or any future development concerns that may be generated by this?
Well, I think whoever would buy it would develop the whole piece. Or, possibly they could, maybe divide it, but it wouldn't be landlocked. You mean landlocked to get down to the residential low? We were providing a road all the way down, if that's the case, or where it could get in, but it'd have to go through the commercial site to get to that area.
Would access be granted through some sort of easement as part of this PUD?
Yes, yeah, we'd have to do that.
And you said that some of the permitted uses in this new zoning, that there were some things that had been eliminated. What were those?
We're going to go over that.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? Have you heard comments?
Yeah, I was just going to say let's go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Hi, my name is Joe Angrisano. I live at 3138 Thoroughbred Loop West, Lakeland, Florida. I'm also the vice president of the HOA. The only thing I wanted to say today, obviously some of this has already been said. Actually, some of it I said previously. But this land borders a substantial amount of homes in our community, including my own. For many of us, it's our backyard. But the land is more than that. It also acts as the common areas for the community. As you can see, even in their PUD, our ponds are there. We have 3 different ponds that the HOA is required to manage. It's in our covenants. So, of course, one concern of ours would be whatever happens with this PUD, especially with the pond up front, is would we still have access to maintain that pond? If there's going to be fences or whatever, we would have to make sure that we had at least some access to maintain it. Of course, more than that, this land is also serves as a common areas for our community. I mean, people fish in that pond. They walk their dogs up front, as we mentioned previously in the last meeting. Kids wait for the school bus up there. So it does serve in some ways as the common area for our community. And giving all that up to commercial development isn't easy. It's why a lot of the people in the community were upset. That's why so many people spoke at the previous meeting. However, I do respect that this is not our land. We can't stop this from being developed. That is not something that we have the ability to do. But I do hope we could reach an agreement with the landowners and developers where there's a little impact to our properties as possible. That not only includes buffers and walls, but also considerations for traffic. Obviously, that is the main entrance for the community. If we bring in commercial development, we will have to share that. I have a hard enough time getting out in the morning as it is. So I would hope to see some sort of plans more than just a buffer that explains, okay, well, how are you going to develop this area? I live on the western portion of the community. I actually live on that large pond there. And, that is next to, I guess, a conserve, but there's also a residential area in there. Obviously, it's not part of the PUD, and I don't know how this works. I'm just a homeowner. But I don't know what happens to that land. I don't know. As you can see, there's quite a few homes where that property serves as our backyard, actually. So, of course, we're all concerned about this entrance. But if you look, there's a dozen or more homes where that is our backyard, would be that land that's actually for sale. Of course, again, it contains those ponds, which the HOA has to maintain. So I would just hope for a little bit of clarification. Obviously, we're looking to work with the developers, but we need a little bit of consideration to make that happen. Thank you.
Good comment? Good answer. These questions.
I don't think, I don't know, Tony, do you want to come up and talk a little bit about, with the ponds, because they've kind of always taken care of the ponds, so historically, but I'll let Mr. Fedovich.
Hi, Tony Fridovich. I'm the managing partner of the Palm LLC, 2600 South Florida Avenue. In reference to the ponds, those were swift mud. That was part of the original design for all that property. It was part of the original DRI of West Lakeland. Those ponds are going to stay like they are. All that land that's not going to go as commercial zoning is going to stay pretty much natural forever, as far as I'm concerned. We're trying to put the buffers in to make the homeowners happy that they don't have to look at something. Other than that, the traffic study was done, and there seems to be no impacts from that at that location at this time. That pond up in the front that they're concerned about, they've been maintaining it, and that's the way I originally set it up. I created that HOA back then. It will stay the exact same thing. We don't even know if we'll be able to use that as part of drainage for this new parcel or not. The original design was, but of course Swift Mud's rules have all changed in all those years, so we'll do whatever Swift Mud makes us do. So again, they will keep those ponds as is. They can't be touched. They're not going to be fenced in. There'll just be a buffer on the western side of it so they don't have to look at a building. So, and again, we're going commercial. It's a one-story building, and it shouldn't have the effects that an apartment complex would have or something. So, questions?
Can you go back to the slide with the buffers? That one. Thank you.
I have a quick question. You said that what is designated as residential low, you don't intend to develop, but if you were to develop it, it would just be single-family lots, correct?
I have no intent. I have no idea. I think the property is probably going to get sold to someone who's going to build a strip center, and it'll include all the property.
But they could do single-family lots.
Yeah, it wouldn't be smart.
It would be the gentleman's concern for the back of his property.
Right. But, that land, all of that land in the original DRI was commercial. So when I developed Steeplechase, that was designated as commercial property. So years ago, the city changed it when some comp plan changed things, and that's how it got to be residential. But that was never intended to be residential there. It was all commercial. And then, of course, the limited access line that was created by the Polk Parkway cut off the access to that property as a commercial property. We've even tried to get right in, right out, and they won't allow that either, so.
Do you have any comments? Anybody on board?
Oh, actually, I still have one question. If the property line that you want to change to PUD, that commercial part, how is it going to be buffered to the remaining RL right in the middle? Is there going to be a buffer there as well, or is that
No.
just going to be open?
That is wetlands, so it's probably never going to get touched anyway.
No. My question is there going to be some sort of buffer between where you're developing and those wetlands at the bottom?
No. It's just vacant land.
Yeah, so it may be hard to see between these two, between the two slides, but the property, the southern portion that's going to convenience center is right here between these two streets of houses. So the point where they intersect and it goes straight across. The residential low that everyone's discussing is this portion right here, which looks really, really wet and consists of some wetlands. So that if that, I can't imagine that'll ever come in for development, but.
And that's fine.
I mean, I guess you never know.
That border back there, right at that boundary, are gonna not have a buffer to look into a building or whatever it is. Or have people.
So the buildings will be up here, and you're concerned about these people down here?
No. If you see right where the tree line is, right? Yeah,
Here.
right there. There's nothing to prevent those houses right there on that one, right there. Those.
Okay. To see the things that are up here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a landscape buffer that will go along this property line, and that's the 30-foot berm and fence.
Okay.
And then this will be the 20-foot.
Okay. Thank you.
So the subject property was previously part of the West Lakeland DRI, Development and Regional Impact, which was a 3,200 acre mixed-use project consisting of residential, retail, office, industrial land uses, which was approved in 1986. The DRI was originally planned to be developed in 7 phases. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen. And the subject property was located in phase 2, which was a mixture of residential and commercial uses. Due to market forces, only phase 1 of the DRI was ever completed, and in 1992, the DRI, the remaining phases 2 through 7 were eliminated by the City Commission through an amendment to the DRI. At the time the DRI was adopted, commercial land uses were assigned. Again, I believe this is, here's the Polk Parkway, here's Airport Road. So this is roughly the property that we're talking about. This map was obviously made, I think, before Steeplechase ever came in, because this does not look like the roadway configuration of Steeplechase. But again, to give you the idea, this property at the intersection of the Parkway and Airport Road was meant to be commercial at that time. So commercial land uses were assigned to this property at the expectation that the Parkway would function as a limited access arterial road with at-grade intersections. As the Parkway developed and grew over time, additional right-of-way was acquired to account for a larger roadway cross-section, grade-separated interchanges, on-ramps and off-ramps, toll plazas, and everything you need to do to build an arterial road. And then as Mr. Fridovich said, at some point during the last 20, 25 years, when the DRI got dissolved, this property became residential. We've tried to do some research. We just can't find out how exactly it happened. So here is the property. I'm standing on Steeplechase Drive and looking south. You can see this is Airport Road over here. Here's the Polk Parkway over Airport Road. The next slide is on the other side of Airport Road, again looking south, kind of. Whoops, excuse me. Airport Road, the parkway's down here. So this is again the area that's going to be changed to commercial, or the applicant is requesting to change to commercial. And then this is looking down towards I'm on the east side of Airport Road now, looking south towards the wetland area. So again, you can see how nice and natural that wetland area is. This will turn to conservation land use with the adoption of this proposal. So to account for the residential subdivision to the east, the applicant has agreed to restrict property to limited C1 uses. This is an example of uses permitted in C1 that would be allowed. Offices, personal service uses such as barbershops, hair salons, fitness studios, music and dance studios, pet grooming and pet daycare. Again, some limited commercial such as antique shops and consignment boutiques, artisan-oriented retail, maybe a grocery store. Again, uses that aren't going to impact too well. Low turnover restaurants or carry-out restaurants, certainly no fast food, no very high turnover restaurants, absolutely not at this location. Churches, adult daycare centers, and child daycare centers. And then I mentioned before, Board Member Tom, that there is a list of some things that we didn't feel was appropriate in the C1 district at this location. And those we're not allowing through the PUD. And those include rooming houses and hostels, bed and breakfasts, hotels, drugstores and pharmacies, medical marijuana dispensing facilities, all 3 levels of group homes, and ground-mounted personal wireless facilities, which is what our code calls cell towers, commonly known as cell towers. Again, we just don't feel these are appropriate given the residential property to the east. To address the concerns about privacy, the applicant's proposing 2 separate landscape buffers. The primary buffer located south of the existing retention pond and adjacent to these residences at the end of the cul-de-sac for Triple Crown Lane will be a 30-foot buffer. This will also include a 3-foot berm and a 6-foot fence on top of the berm. The other buffer is a 20-foot wide buffer that will be on the west shore of the existing retention pond. That's just south of Steeplechase Drive. And again, that retention pond is approximately 1.2 acres in size, and it functions as a pretty good buffer itself. So that's why there's only a 20-foot buffer up there. There's some other recommended performance standards we've included in the PUD, which we'll get to when I read the conditions of approval, that restrict the use of outdoor public address systems, bell ringers, and loudspeakers, limitation on the hours which delivery trucks can be loaded and unloaded, and a prohibition on the performance of live music outdoors. But I wanted to give Chuck Barmby a chance if he wanted to come up and address traffic concerns at all. I'm not sure if you had anything prepared, Chuck, but.
Good morning, Chuck Barmby with Community Economic Development for the record. I really didn't have anything prepared today because from a zoning standpoint, the proposed use or area is actually going to generate less traffic than the current zoning. So going from the 8+ acres down to the 6+ acres is going to have a net positive impact from a zoning standpoint on the traffic circulation and trip generation in the area. Actually, in terms of the traffic analysis that's been conducted for the actual construction of the development, we're looking at uses that generate around 110 PM peak hour trips, which for C1, with the exceptions that are built into the PUD, it really represents a low end in terms of traffic generation from a commercial use standpoint. Most of the issues that we're going to have in this area from traffic is going to be generated by much larger development to the north, and primarily the Lakes of Laurel Highlands and Lakeland Central Park, which is the Lakes of Laurel Highlands is the residential development to the east side of Airport Road, about 631 single-family units of build-out. Lakeland Central Park, which is the major business park along the west side of Airport Road. At this point, the Lakeland Central Park developer is working with DOT on intersection treatments at the Winston Park Airport intersection, which is north of this site. There may be some either signalization, roundabout, some other type of intersection treatment at that location, which would include turn lane improvements to the south towards the Pole Parkway. That's still being evaluated by DOT. So this use is from a commercial standpoint, a traffic generation standpoint, is benign. From a zoning standpoint, it's less intensive than what's allowed today. And most of the issues that we've been hearing about is really tied to other development activity to the north. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Question?
Thank you very much.
So before we continue, I missed gentleman in the back earlier who had some comments.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Brian Horn. Live at 3136 Steeplechase, 3136 Philly Lane. Just have a question. The C1 limited use, does that also include no convenience store service station, gas station?
Yeah, that's correct. Gas stations are not permitted in C1.
Because that was our a big concern for us that we were trying
Yeah,
to.
C1 is our least intense
Okay.
commercial district, and gas stations are not allowed.
Okay. And the only other thing, is there any possibility that the wetland that will most likely never be developed, could it be zoned something that would say it will be a conservation area and it won't be developed? Thank you for your consideration.
I guess I would have to say that's up to the applicant. Right now, what's before us is what we've already gone over. At this time, there's no change to this. We don't have a legal description of this area. Yeah, it would have to be rezoned and probably a land use change as well to conservation. So, I mean, they'd have to come back in to do that. But, buffer substantial. Yes, the buffer is substantial in that area. So let me get to my slides again, get back on track. So the Community and Economic Development Department reviewed this request and recommends the approval of the land use change and application of PUD zoning. We mailed out letters of notification to 124 property owners within 500 feet of the subject property. In addition to those that spoke at the July public hearing, 3 emails and 3 phone calls were received in objection to the original application, which is when it was straight zoning to C1. The majority of those calls were supportive of the change in land use from convenience center to conservation in the southwest portion of the property, but there were some objections to the relocation of the commercial entitlements, as we've already talked about. I will say also within probably the last week or so, mostly within the last 24 hours, we received 4 emails and 1 phone call about this current application to go to PUD zoning, and most everybody had the same comments, concerned about traffic, concerned about the impact of the commercial on their way of life. But again, with that, we recommend approval with the following conditions. A, permitted uses. Those uses permitted by right within C1 zoning districts, except for the following uses which shall be prohibited: rooming houses and hostels, level 1, bed and breakfast, hotels, drugstores and pharmacies, medical marijuana dispensing facilities, group homes level 1, level 2, and level 3, and ground-mounted personal wireless facilities, which again is what we call cell towers. B, maximum intensity of use, 29,000 square feet. C, development standards in accordance with the C1 suburban corridor context subdistrict. D, site development plan. The project shall be developed in substantial accordance with the site development plan shown in attachment C. Minor adjustments to the site plan may be made at the time of site plan review without requiring a modification to the PUD. E, performance standards. 1, the use of outdoor public address systems, bell ringers, or loudspeakers shall be prohibited. 2, the loading and unloading of trucks, trailers, or other vehicles shall be prohibited between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. 3, the performance of live music outdoors, whether amplified or unamplified, shall be prohibited. F, landscaping and buffering in accordance with the Land Development Code except as follows. 1, as shown on attachments C and D along the western shore of the existing retention pond, a landscape buffer with a minimum width of 20 feet consisting of 6 type B trees and 32 shrubs per 100 lineal feet shall be constructed by the developer. Maintenance of the landscaping shall be the responsibility of the property owner. Specific tree/shrub species, planting locations, and quantities shown on the landscape plan will be subject to review and approval by Parks and Recreation at the time of site plan review. 2, as shown on attachment C and D, parallel to the rear property lines of the single-family lots on Triple Crown Lane, a landscape buffer with a minimum width of 30 feet consisting of a 3-foot high berm with a 6-foot high privacy fence on top and 4 type B trees with 16 shrubs shall be constructed by the developer. Maintenance of the landscaping shall be the responsibility of the property owner. Specific tree/shrub species, planting locations, and quantities shown on the landscape plan will be subject to review and approval by the Parks and Recreation at time of site plan review. G, outdoor lighting. Any outdoor lighting used shall be shielded in accordance with section 4.6 of the Land Development Code. And finally, some transportation conditions. 1, binding concurrency determination shall be made with each site plan submittal. 2, development activity on the site shall comply with all Florida Department of Transportation permitting requirements along the airport road frontage, including the Steeplechase Drive intersection. 3, an ADA compliant sidewalk shall be constructed along the development parcel Steeplechase Drive frontage, connecting to the existing sidewalk along the east side of Airport Road. 4, ADA compliant pedestrian routes shall be constructed between the principal buildings and the ADA compliant sidewalks on Airport Road and Steeplechase Drive. Number 5, bicycle parking shall be provided for each principal building in compliance with section 4.11.6 of the Land Development Code and Index 900 of the City Engineering Standards Manual.
Anything else?
Any questions?
Any questions? So, I hear a motion to approve the recommendation of the staff.
A motion to approve the recommended land use change to PUD as presented and with the staff recommendations.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Recused. No, I'm recused from the vote.
Note in the minutes that Susan Seitz was recused herself. Okay, so the motion carries 5-0.
Did you,
Thank you.
I can't remember, but you recused from last month consideration of this item too, and did you?
I filled out all the paperwork and
Yeah,
jumped
you
through all the
already-
hoops and did all
Okay,
that stuff.
right, just to confirm. Thank you.
Item 4, review minutes of the September meeting.
I only have, I noted a couple minor things that really have no effect, it's more of a housekeeping thing. On page 2, second to last paragraph, where it says to support the growth of the medical district along US 98 North Church Prospect Road. And on page 4, Teresa is a Ms., not a Mr., so that should be Ms. Mayo. And later on, where it says, a couple paragraphs down, the next subsection states that all should be requirements, not requires, for a lot and parcel split shall be processed through the county property appraiser's office. Those are the only things I saw, and just really housekeeping things more than anything else. Anybody else have any changes or comments?
Just want to confirm, did you catch the
Yes,
changes?
the
that he-
minor typos.
Okay.
Okay. I hear a motion for approval of the minutes with the suggested changes.
I move to approve the minutes with the suggested changes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item 5, proposed text amendment to the Lakeland Comprehensive Plan, Our Community 2030, to adopt a property rights element. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Morning again, Mayor Stahl, Senior Planner of Community Economic Development. As stated last month, this is just a proposed text amendment change to our comprehensive plan. The legislation passed in July requires that all of our comprehensive plans be updated with this additional amendment to our plan. And the state will not consider any future land use amendments until this element is adopted and sent to the state. And in front here, you'll see the rights that have been added, which are the right to physically possess and control interest in property, including easements, leases, or mineral rights. The right to use, maintain, develop, and improve property for personal use for the use of any other person subject to state law and local ordinances. The right of the owner to privacy and to exclude others from property to protect the owner's possessions and property. And lastly, the right to dispose of property through sale or gift. And as the city, we do recommend the approval of this amendment and stand for any question.
Any questions?
I would just make the comment, Mr. Chair, that this is something that we're required by law to have in our comp plan now due to the legislation. And these are just these rights that now that they're going to be in the comp plan after presumably the board approves and the commission approves, these considerations are now part of everything that comes before the board, which they already were to a certain extent, but now they are part of the letter of the comprehensive plan. So just something to keep in mind going forward. These considerations here are now something that we have to consider once this gets made part of the comp plan.
We are voting on this now. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation as presented on item 5?
I'll motion to accept.
Second.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 6, application of PUD zoning to allow for a 148-bed assisted living facility on approximately 10.45 acres, generally located south of the Polk Parkway, west of Airport Road, and north of Carillon Boulevard. Owner, Louise W. Moore Family Trust. Applicant, Sarah Case, Econ South LLC.
Good morning. Again, Todd Vargo for the record, Community and Economic Development. This property is not far from the Steeplechase property we just talked about one case ago. It's on the southwest corner of the intersection of Airport Road and the Polk Parkway, just north of the entrance to Carillon Lakes. The subject property is approximately 10.5 acres in area and has a future land use designation of Interchange Activity Center, is within the Suburban Corridor Context District. This property was annexed into the city on March 3rd, 1986, and was originally given a different land use designation within the former West Lakeland Development, a regional impact. Apparently, this whole area was part of that West Lakeland DRI. On November 6, 2000, as part of a large-scale land use amendment, which included adjacent properties to the south and west, the future land use designation was changed to the current Interchange Activity Center designation. Zoning, however, was not applied for at that time. That's why you don't see on the base map on the left, there's no zoning on that map. The Interchange Activity Center future land use designation is a special category that was created to address the unique opportunities associated with development at limited access highway interchanges. While primarily intended for high-intensity commercial uses, the land use category also allows for residential uses with a maximum intensity of up to 75 dwelling units to the acre. All development within the Interchange Activity Center future land use district requires creation of either a special public interest district or approval of a planned unit development. A second reason why we're here for the PUD. Number one, there's no zoning on the property right now. Number two, to do anything in the Interchange Activity Center, you need a PUD or to create a SPI. So access limitations from Airport Road and adjacent single-family uses to the southwest preclude the development of the property for more intense commercial uses, such as fast food, quick service type restaurants or convenience stores. The subject property is also constrained by some wetlands along Airport Road frontage. It's right here. And the northern portion of the property adjacent to the Polk Parkway, which would be this darker area right here. Due to these constraints, the proposed assisted living facility will be located in the southern portion of the property with a one-story memory care unit located, and this might be easier to read, the one-story memory care unit located just north of Carillon Boulevard, and the three-story assisted living facility further to the north. This use is not much of a traffic generator, so I'm not going to ask Mr. Barnby to come up because there's really nothing to talk about. Again, given what could be here through the IAC future land use designation, this will have very, very low impact on the Airport Road traffic situation. Access to the property will be off of Airport Road, limited solely to a right-in, right-out driveway. The property was granted this perpetual easement by Florida Department of Transportation in 1998, which guarantees access to Airport Road with the approval of a driveway permit by FDOT. We heard this last month, and I believe there was somebody who came forward from Carillon Boulevard or from Carillon Lakes just wanting to know about the location of it of this close to Carillon Boulevard. We mailed out letters of notification to 5 property owners within 500 feet of the subject property, and no objections or comments were received from there. We also did send a copy of the letter to the management company for the homeowners association so that they could make copies of the letter and distribute them to the homeowners in Carillon Lakes. So we did everything we could to make without mailing to everybody in Carillon Lakes to make sure that everybody was aware of this because it's because of its location near Carillon Lakes. So we did review this request and recommend approval of the PUD zoning for the 148-bed assisted living facility with a 1-story memory unit and 1-story amenity center and 3-story assisted living unit. Here is the property looking west from Airport Road to the subject site. You can kind of see in the distance the Carillon Lakes Tower at their common area. This is kind of from this at the same position. I just turned to my right a little bit to look northeast, and you can see the Polk Parkway. Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is. I'm sorry. Let me strike that from the record. This is looking northeast from Carillon Boulevard towards Airport Road. This is Polk Parkway over here, but this is Airport Road. There's a FedEx delivery truck, I think, on there. So I've actually got the entrance to Carillon Lakes at my back. I believe the gate entrance is at my back. So this is still the subject property, but looking towards Airport Road, kind of looking to the northeast. This is the one where I pivoted, and now I'm looking northwest. Still got the gate entry to my back. And again, you can kind of see the Polk Parkways over here somewhere. You can see the lights. And I've taken some steps back to right by the gate. You can see there where you put your card in to get into, and this is, again, the subject property right here. And here's the site plan again. So again, we do recommend approval of this application of PUD zoning. And I will read the conditions. And number 1, permitted uses: a 148-bed assisted living facility complex with assisted living and memory care units. Number 2, site development plan. The project shall be developed in substantial accordance with the site development plan shown in attachment C. With the approval of the Director of Community and Economic Development, minor modifications may be made to the site development plan at the time of site plan review without requiring a modification of this PUD. 3, development regulations. In accordance with the C1 Suburban Corridor Subdistrict Standards, except as otherwise provided herein. A, maximum building height: 3 stories for the assisted living building, 1 story for the memory care units and the main entrance / amenity center. B, minimum perimeter setbacks 25 feet. 4, sidewalks. An ADA compliant sidewalk shall be constructed along the Airport Road frontage and along the entranceway from Airport Road to the development site. ADA compliant sidewalk shall also connect each principal building within the development site. Earlier on in the hearing, the applicant asked, because we actually, in number 7, the transportation conditions, we have probably more specific sidewalk conditions. The applicant was afraid that the first sentence in number 4 could mean that they build a sidewalk all the way up to the Polk Parkway. So I would like to strike, if I could, the first sentence under number 4. So number 4 would just read sidewalks. ADA compliant sidewalk shall also connect each principal building within the development site. And you'll see why when we get to number 7. 5, signage. In accordance with the official commercial and small lot general commercial zoning district regulations, O1, O2, and C1, as specified in subsection 4.9.4.3 of the Land Development Code. 6, landscaping and buffering in accordance with the Land Development Code, except as follows. A, adjacent to the southern perimeter project boundary where there are no existing wetlands, a type A buffer, as shown in figure 4.5-9 of the Land Development Code, shall be planted. Construction of a fence or wall as part of the landscape buffer shall be optional. 7, transportation conditions. A, binding concurrency determinations shall be made at the time of site plan submittal. B, the site shall comply with all Florida Department of Transportation permitting requirements. C, driveway access to Carillon Boulevard shall not be allowed. And these are the two sidewalk conditions that I think are better worded. D, an ADA compliant sidewalk shall be provided along the site driveway between the required airport road frontage sidewalk and principal building entrance. And E, a sidewalk shall be constructed along the site's airport road frontage between its driveway and the Carillon Boulevard intersection. And finally, F, bicycle parking shall be provided per section 4.11.6 of the Land Development Code and shall be designed and constructed in compliance with Index 900 of the City Engineering Standards Manual. So not to beat a dead horse, but again, what the applicant is concerned about is that number 4 could mean that they build a sidewalk all the way up from Carillon Boulevard all the way to Polk Park, to the Polk Parkway, which there is no sidewalk on this side of the road north of the Polk Parkway, so it wouldn't connect to anything. What's probably more important would be to connect, as in number 7, to connect the site to a sidewalk along the entranceway and then connect the entranceway with a sidewalk between the entrance down to Carillon Boulevard, because I believe there are sidewalks on the south side. So again, I'll stand for any questions, but I'd like to strike that first sentence under number 4 because it's better communicated in the sidewalk conditions under number 7. And again, stand for any questions.
Any questions before?
Just one question on that sidewalk. Do they actually own the parcel that's closer towards the parkway, or do they not? I thought that was in DOT right away.
Yeah, I don't believe they actually own it, but they can make improvements to it.
For the record again, Chuck Barnaby, Community Economic Development. DOT owns a tract that runs from just north of the driveway up to the Polk Parkway, but also that area gets into limited access right-of-way. And so kind of looking at past decisions where developers were not allowed to really touch anything within the LA right-of-way, we just wanted to go ahead and exempt that out and avoid the confusion down the road.
Any other question? How do we phrase any motion to take into account the change in the sidewalk?
I mean, I think if it's just as recommended by staff would be sufficient, I think is.
Okay, and that'll include the change was requested.
Yes.
Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of staff as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item 7, change in zoning from RA4 Single Family Residential to O1 Low Impact Office on property located at 103 West 7th Street. Owner, Lakeland Community Redevelopment Agency. Applicant, Lakeland Community Redevelopment Agency.
Good morning, and Marisol, Community Economic Development. And they bring you forward change of zoning for 103 West 7th Street. The parcel is a little under a quarter acre. It's currently zoned single-family residential, RE4, and proposed O1 potential low-impact office. It is a vacant property. I'll just see here, it's an aerial. Map is a general location here, and I'm sorry. The property is owned by Lakeland Community Economic Redevelopment Agency, and it was acquired in 2007. The property is located on the northwest corner of Florida Avenue and West 7th Street. And as mentioned last month, property is within the low-impact office zoning, will contribute to the CRA goals of redevelopment with redevelop infill lots. The Lakeland CRA published in December 2020 a notice of disposition for specific requirements for this development area and to meet their redevelopment goals in their plan, Midtown District Plan. At this time, their current request is to accommodate a proposed development project by Phoenix Properties LLC, should the City Commission approve it next month with their development agreement and subsequent disposition. If it does not get approved, the CRA still would like to attract like developments for this area in the event that disposition does not yield an agreement. As mentioned before, it is a vacant parcel currently. The north and west of the adjacent properties are also vacant. The north, as mentioned previous meeting, is owned by, not owned by CRA, but they are getting grants from the CRA. The property owner is proposed to do a bagel shop there. And, but to the south, the Robinson Kyle's Council Testing Clinic also received CRA funds, grant funds for their building as well. These are just photos of the property. The first image here is to the southeast corner of the property facing west. And this is, again, the southeast corner facing east towards Lakeland Regional. And this is the southeast corner as well, facing south towards the Robson Kyle Counseling Center. And this is the north east corner facing the vacant property in South Florida Avenue. And here. Oops, sorry about that. Our recommendation is to approve the change of zoning to continue the area, medical area of the district, and I stand for any questions you may have.
Okay.
That's it.
Any questions from the board? In the audience? I hear a motion to accept the recommendation of staff.
I move that we approve the change in zoning from RA4 to O1.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item 8, report of City Commission action on Planning and Zoning Board recommendations, along with the Planning and Housing Manager's report.
The two items listed in your agenda packet that were approved by the City Commission as of their September 20th meeting include the cell tower on the Holloway Park property just east of the Sam's Club off Lakeland Highlands. And the second item that was approved was the planned unit development zoning modification for Parkway Preserve on the other side of the entry road to Carillon Lakes from the last project you just heard. Looking at future cases coming up for next month, there's going to be a request for an accessory dwelling unit on Palencia Place. There's also a PUD modification being requested for the Wedgwood Golf Course to convert that to primarily multifamily uses. And finally, there's a multifamily development being proposed at the south end of the Miriam Public Shopping Center. And that would be for 240 4 apartments located at that entrance road that comes off Pipkin, which becomes Merriam, Lake Merriam. And that's it for the new cases for next month.
Anybody have anything else? Okay. Motion, we're adjourned.
I think it's going to be that long. Oh, my goodness.